tonight I share the poetry of my healing. I believe that unconditional love was weaved into our DNA at conception, and that the ability to love others must flow through the love that we hold for self. I believe that unconditional love begins with self-love, and that you cannot love self without first acknowledging your secret places, often called brokenness. Now, having unconditional love for self is easier said than done because people typically don't practice self-love activities as we should. We overextend and we sacrifice ourselves for those that we love. And we sacrifice ourselves for the career paths that we choose. And we take on unnecessary strain and we justify it by labeling it bettering ourselves. And we forget about the one person who matters, the one person in the equation we should dedicate to, self. I started sharing my thought on unconditional self-love in October of 2014 as I was navigating through a healing process. I created a Facebook page called Love You More, and I used it as a journal to help quiet the noise in my world. Now, at the time, I was only connected with 20 of my closest friends and family, of which shared my entries with their friends, who then shared my entries with their friends, and so on. You know how that goes. And one day, I received a message on a post from a woman telling me that my insight has given her the courage to change and love herself more. And I tell you, never in a million years would I have ever imagined that my thought could be that influential to inspire a woman that I do not know to change and invest in self-love. Now, I've had 43 cycles around the sun, and at sun cycle 9, childhood abandonment and its negative projection imprinted on my soul. Imagine sitting in the window at the tender age of 9, praying that your dad would pick you up like he promised so many times before, praying that this time he would just show up. Now imagine falling asleep in that window and the very next day waking with the same prayer. The first man that should have loved me without condition had conditions. I was an option and not a priority. Now, in hindsight, the relationship with my biological father set the tone for every intimate relationship that I would experience in my sun cycles, all because he didn't show up for me. Now imagine, if you would, experiencing the loss of a marital covenant, and because of that loss, you are left feeling emotionally drained, unworthy of love, maybe even feeling as though you have no purpose or no direction, and you're fearful of next steps. With true transparency and humility, I will submit that I've experienced both. Sun cycle 39 began my journey to unconditional self-love. In March of 2014, the world as I knew it was disrupted. The person that I shared my secrets with, that was supposed to love me unconditionally, betrayed me with the act of infidelity. Now, the heartbreak that I endured as a result of this action crushed every positive thought that I had about myself. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why? Well, because I lost my identity in being a wife, and I neglected the needs of the individual that counted the most, self. Now, I loved everything about being a wife. The intimacy, the emotional connection with another soul, The family nights, the vacations, church on Sunday with my family, the date nights. How I sacrificed my self-worth. And I ignored my self-care, all in the name of love. And then it was over. And there I was, sitting alone in the window with abandonment again. The covenant just didn't show up for me. Now, while sitting alone with abandonment, I was uncomfortable because this was a space that I had stockpiled all of my pain and my disappointments in, and I never expected to return to this space. And now I am surrounded by abandonment issues as well as other issues that I've never addressed. And I began to experience boundless grief, anxiety, and depression. I questioned my worth. I released self-defeating words to the universe. I felt like a failure that no longer had an identity. And so I stayed in the room with abandonment for countless weeks, stuck in a defeated state of thought. And then love extended grace. One day, I received a text from a telephone number that I did not recognize, and this text changed my view. This text read, "The reward of labor is life. Hang in there, everything will be all right." Now, I tried calling this number back, and it was unreachable, and to this day, I have no idea who sent that message, but it was the message that sparked a small flame bright enough for me to see a path, and I knew that I could no longer sit in the room with abandonment again. I knew that I had to do for myself what no other person could. I had to show up for the little girl that fell asleep in the window. And showing up meant that I had to allow myself to feel. I had to feel the pain and the disappointments that I had stockpiled, and I had to learn how to show myself compassion in extreme distress. And I can honestly say that the action of extending myself compassion was problematic because compassion is complicated. It's tricky. See, as I was navigating through the transition of healing, I still beat myself up with the should've, would've, could've syndrome, but here is where I found mercy. Through therapy, I've learned to identify my storm and make a conscious decision to release or surrender my will to control it. Now, I tell you, I didn't get this right all the time. I failed many times. But as I adopted the practice of surrendering, the action got easier. Because I realized that unforgiveness cradled anger. Forgiveness released anger, and forgiveness released me. Now, over time, unconditional love and self-compassion taught me to love me more. During moments of extreme distress, I've learned that I must identify what I am feeling and do positive self-talk to redirect the way that I feel when thoughts and words are striking me in a negative manner. It is okay to love me more in those moments. Now, the kindness of self-compassion led me to another pivotal moment in my healing journey. This step was unavoidable because if I wanted to continue to move through my healing process, I had to acknowledge my brokenness and how I contributed to it. I acknowledged that I made self-defeating decisions for myself, and I allowed others to make self-defeating decisions for me. I acknowledged that I accepted emotional abuse in the name of love. I acknowledged that I allowed my self-worth to be dictated by the actions of others, and I allowed my lack of self-worth to impact my self-esteem. And finally, I acknowledged that low self-esteem dictated the way that I loved myself and prevented me from setting healthy boundaries. So tonight, I've shared a portion of my truth with you. But this is what I pray you take away from it. Unconditional self-love is an action that is fluid and it does not yield to external pressures. To have unconditional self-love means that you choose yourself. You must be a priority to yourself. It means that you take ownership for the bad decisions that you've made and you forgive yourself. It means that you care for your emotional, physical needs. It means that you surrender your will to control circumstances that you cannot. And to conclude, it means that you will no longer sacrifice yourself for anyone or anything else. May you know grace. May you know peace. And may you know love. Thank you for holding space with me.